family. Let me get us going on Facebook and we will be good to go. We're connecting. Okay. All right. If you are watching live, go ahead, just drop a hashtag live in the comments. If you're watching the replay, just go ahead and drop a hashtag replay. Doesn't matter when you get the information, just as long as you are getting the information. I'm excited to talk about tonight's topic, knowing your nutrition labels, right? So important that we know how to read our nutrition labels. We know what's in the food that we're consuming because, like we always say, when we know better, we do better. And so that's the second step of the signature system, right? Education. We have to get the education to know how to apply it, to then know how to do better. It's just like last week, we talked about the principles of behavior. When you apply those principles, that's when you start to see that true behavior change and that behavior modification, which is step 5. So as we get into tonight's topics, if you have a win for the week, just go ahead and drop that in the comments. We want to celebrate with you. We want to hear what it is that you've been successful at. Maybe you haven't really been tracking, and maybe this last week you started tracking. Maybe you hadn't been staying significantly on plan, and this week maybe you were on plan 80 to 90% of the time, and that's been a huge win for you. So drop that in the chat so we can celebrate with you. Maybe you had been missing too many workouts. Maybe you hadn't been drinking enough water. I know that is my biggest struggle sometimes, is getting my water intake in. And so whatever your win, no matter how big or how small you perceive it, remember, we celebrate and we track all of our wins. That's step 6 of the 7-step signature system. Okay, so tonight, as we get into really talking about the nutrition labels, I want to make sure that we're understanding the formula that we talk about when we talk about, hey, here's the formula that you need to eat each meal. Because again, we don't think in terms of totals for the day, except for our net carbohydrates. So I know that's a lot of information. So we're going to go over that. We're going to get into some specifics so that you know what to look for and you can really help accelerate your progress, right? We want to accelerate our health. It's Health Accelerator. Okay. So as we talk about really getting into the nitty gritty, the what we eat, what we think, and when we are making sure that all 3 of those things are as tight and crisp as possible, that's when we're going to see the most significant progress. Okay. That's what makes our progress go round. What we eat, what we think, and what we do. Okay. The 7-step signature system, the what we do, we have to opt in. Okay. We have to opt in. Second step, education. Again, when we know better, we do better. Then we have accountability, tracking, behavior modification, track all wins and celebrate them too, just not with food. And then the last step is give back. Okay. So when we talk about looking at a nutrition label, what are we looking for? Okay. So the first thing we're going to look at when we look at the nutrition label, we're going to look at the total protein. Okay. So what is the formula? We're looking for 20 to 30 grams of protein per serving. And that's important. Okay. We want to make sure we're looking at the serving sizes, and it's right there on the label. It'll tell you. And also, let's say we're eating our real whole foods that maybe don't have a label on them. That's key, to eat as many foods that don't have a label on them as possible. Fill your plate up with those foods, and you can look up the nutrition in them. So the nutrition for a piece of chicken, 4 ounces is about 32 grams of protein. How do I know that? 4 ounces of chicken breast is 32 grams of protein because I've done it. It's repetition. Okay. I've logged it over and over and over again. Okay. And I got that from using MyFitnessPal. That is a huge, wonderful tool that you can use. And you don't have to get the paid version, you can get the free version. And it just allows you to look up typical nutrition in the foods that you're consistently eating. And the more you eat them, the more you know what's in them, right? I know one egg has 70 calories, 6 grams of protein, 4.5 grams of fat. I know that because I've written it down 1,000 times. I know one egg white is 16 calories, 4 grams of protein, and no fat. How do I know that? I've written it down 1,000 times. Okay. And so these are the things that as you do them more, repetition is key, right? That's why we go over our formula, our signature system, and our 3 pillars each week, because the more we hear them, the deeper they get ingrained into our subconscious, and the more our actions start to align with those concepts. So when you're looking at the nutrition label, you're going to look at the protein content. So 20 to 30 grams of protein per serving is what you're looking for. If it's a little more, a little less, give or take, that's perfect. Okay. 20 to 30 grams of protein, 5 to 8 grams of fat. And this is where you get in trouble with like your peanut butter and your nuts and all of that, because in order to get 20 to 30 grams of protein out of that, you have to eat way more than one serving, and then your fat content goes way up. That's why nuts are a source of fat. They are not a source of protein. Doesn't mean you can't have them. It just means you need to be mindful of your portions, 5 to 8 grams of fat. And this is for the entire meal. Okay. So if you're cooking with butter, if you're adding olive oil or coconut oil, we factor in all of these things. Okay. The sauces that we have, sauces are kind of like a silent, they add stuff to our nutrition that we might not otherwise think, and we don't take account for it. And so then it increases our numbers either with the sugar or the carbohydrates or both, right? Okay. So 5 to 8 grams of fat, 5+ grams of fiber. Now, your fiber is going to come solely from your green vegetables and some of your other vegetables too, and a little bit from our Health Accelerator approved fruits like apples, cherries, berries, those types of things. Okay. So that's where our fiber is coming from. Okay. And then 10 to 15 grams or less of carbohydrates per meal. Okay. And this is where, when we're eating foods that are high in sugar, we're increasing, because all carbohydrates, no matter good or bad, all carbohydrates are sugar. And so the more sugar we have, the more carbohydrates we're going to have. That's why green vegetables have very low carbohydrates, because they have very low sugar content. Okay. It's just the name of the game. Okay. So when we're looking at nutrition labels, okay, you want to be really mindful. You turn the package over. You're not only looking at the label, but you also want to go a little bit further down and look at the ingredients. Okay. And I need to pull this up. I forgot to pull this up before class. Oh, goodness. Somebody was telling me about these protein bars. And it was such a good example. I'm not even going to say the name of them, because she was telling me that she looked at them and they were just so good. And this is not someone who's in the Health Accelerator program, but they were just saying how good the protein bars were and how they had their nutritionist look at them, and the nutritionist even said, "Yeah, I think they're okay." And then I looked immediately at the ingredients, and it was like, "Oh my goodness, no, absolutely not." So, let me find them. Okay. So this is for a bar that was called Stupid Cupid. Okay. one of their Valentine's things. I'm going to pull up the ingredients and well, I think I'm going to pull up the ingredients. I pulled them up the other day. Okay, I don't see them on there. Let's see. I appreciate everyone's patience because I want to make my point here. I want you to see. Okay, scroll. Okay, here we go. So this is actually a different flavor, but you can see here, you go down to the ingredients. Okay, first of all, the ingredients are a mile long, and there's some ingredients in there that I can't pronounce, right? But whey protein is the first one, soluble corn fiber, tapioca syrup, brown rice syrup, whole wheat flour, glucose, and then a whole bunch of other stuff: blue 1, yellow 6, red 40, yellow 5, blue 2, and natural flavorings. Okay. When you see natural flavorings, you see anything that ends in the OSE, right? That's all sugar. And then they even have whole wheat flour as the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th ingredient, which means that's one of the more prominent ingredients in the protein bar. Okay, not a good choice. This protein bar has 22 carbohydrates, 7 grams of fiber, and it's the soluble corn fiber that's giving you the fiber. They just inject the bar with the fiber, and that's why protein bars are typically not a great source and not a great option, and can keep us stuck. Okay, so anything that has those types of things in it, you need to be very careful. If it has whole wheat flour in the ingredients, it's not going to serve you well. It's going to spike your blood sugar. I promise you, 100% of the time, that's what it's going to do. Okay, so it's really important that not only we look at the label, but we go that one step further and look at the ingredients. And the ingredients are going to tell you everything you need to know. Because as soon as I saw that, it was like, well, I'm certainly not purchasing this. Like, this is not an option. Okay. And so that's where you have to be very careful. Okay. Now, if you are eating foods that don't have a nutrition label, those are real whole foods. Okay. Those are foods that we are wanting to consume more of. So we crowd out our plate with these real whole foods. And how do we do that? How do we build our plate? We start with the protein, that 20 to 30 grams. That's going to be about 3 to 4 ounces of protein. And a good judgment, if you don't have a food scale, I really highly recommend investing in a food scale. They're not that expensive and they're easy to use. But if you don't have one, in the meantime, about the size of the palm of your hand. Okay, we've all heard that before, but that's typically about what it is. That gives me about 4 ounces, and I don't have very big hands, but that gives me about 4 ounces. Okay, so I know if I'm on the go and I'm in a pinch, I can say, okay, about 4 ounces of protein, that's going to give me, or 4 ounces of meat, right? That's going to give me what I need. And then you build around it with your green vegetables, a little bit of fruit, and that's all you need. Right? That's going to give you the fuel that you need to get through the day. So when you're looking at items that have nutrition labels, it's very important that you read the ingredients. I cannot stress that enough. And I cannot stress how eye-opening it was for me to start reading the ingredients on some of the things I was eating when I first got started on the Health Accelerator program. And I was just blown away by what was in them. And I even had a friend who was just around me a lot and would watch the things that I would eat. And one time he sent me the label of a protein bar that he bought without looking at anything, because he just grabbed it at the gas station and he got to work. He's like, I would have been better off getting a Big Mac. And I was like, yep, almost. and I'm not condoning getting a Big Mac. That's not on plan either. Right. But it was insane what was in this protein bar that was being promoted as a healthy choice. And that's where I think a lot of the confusion comes from. These companies are advertising them as healthy choices, but they're simply not. When you get down to the nitty gritty and you start reading the ingredients, you see all the things that are in them. Okay. And I was going through my pantry to see if I had anything, and I really don't, because most of the things in my pantry are just like canned vegetables and just different little things that are put up that I don't really ever even go in my pantry. But that's all behavior that has changed over time as I reprogrammed my subconscious mind. Now I can look at those protein bars that someone recommended to me, and I'm like, I'm not buying this. I'm not spending money on this. It's not something that is even on my radar, and I don't even have to think twice about it, because I look at the ingredients and that's where I immediately go. So once you get into the habit of it, you can quickly look at it and say, yeah, this is what I want, or this is what I don't want. And for me, the first ingredient on that protein bar was whey protein, and I don't eat whey protein as a general rule. I typically stick to the vegan protein powders because they are simply digested a little better. Okay, so those are the protein powders I stick with. And so for me, looking at something that has whey protein in it, it's just simply really not an option. Okay, so that's in knowing what works. And how do you do that? You get the education. When we know better, we do better. So I want you to really kind of think about this week. Think about the things that you're eating that have a nutrition label. And if it doesn't, I want you to look it up in the MyFitnessPal app. Okay. And it's very simple to look it up and then translate into your food log. That's something that I just got in the habit of. Every evening I would log it in my MyFitnessPal throughout the day, and then I would sit down at night and transfer it into my food log. And what that does is that educates you just that little bit more, because it allows you, again, behavior that receives attention is behavior that's repeated. We talked about that a lot last week. It allows you to look over it again, and it allows you to continue to get in that habit of knowing what you're putting in your body. Okay. And if you don't know exactly, let's say you go to a restaurant, okay, and you're not exactly sure, and maybe that restaurant isn't listed on MyFitnessPal. A lot of the chain restaurants are. And so if you're going to those, you may be able to find what you're looking for, right? Like I know Outback and Longhorn, all of those are in MyFitnessPal. But if you're going to more local restaurants, find something that's similar to it and give your best estimate. Okay. That's key in making progress, because what happens when we put something down and we're not looking everything up, that's when things start to go by the wayside. That handful of chocolate that we picked up at the office gets forgotten about, and we don't log it. And then we wonder why we're not making progress. That glass of champagne or glass of wine or the mixed drink that we had doesn't get logged, yet it's full of sugar. And so then we wonder why we're not making as quick of progress as we want to make. So that's why we write every single thing that we eat and drink down, because it could be something as simple as maybe we're drinking a little bit too much alcohol, or maybe we're adding a little bit too much sauce to something. I'll never forget when I first started Health Accelerator, I went over to my best friend's house and she made the best green beans I've ever had in my entire life. And I asked her how she made them. And she said, oh, yeah, I just put teriyaki sauce on them. And I was like, oh, okay, perfect. So I go and I look up the teriyaki sauce. Well, it's full of sugar. So no wonder they were so good. I hadn't been eating sugar. And then I eat those green beans and it's like, oh my goodness, these are so good. But it's because I hadn't been eating sugar. And so, a one-off, it didn't set me back, but I knew that wasn't something I could add to eat all the time. Okay, so those are things that I had to look up the ingredients, and I had to look up teriyaki sauce. It's full of sugar. That's why it's so good sometimes. Okay. And so these are the things that the more we educate ourselves, the more we look things up, the more we familiarize ourselves with an easy way to look things up, like MyFitnessPal. There's several other ones out there. I think MyFitnessPal is the easiest, and it's got a huge database of, like I said, chain restaurants in there. So you can look up and kind of get something close if you're eating out. Okay. And you can also construct your own recipes in there. So my egg casserole, I went in, I put all the ingredients of how I made the egg casserole, and I said how many servings I did, and it splits it up and it does it for me. Okay. That's all in the free version. Same thing with my protein muffins. I'm able to do all of that. Okay. And it does it for me. So I just input the ingredients and then it spits it out for me. These are great tools that we can use to continue educating ourselves. And I will never forget drawing a sad face next to one of my meals that I had one time at Longhorn. And it was just grilled chicken and artichoke hearts, and I can't remember what else was on it, but it was insane after I looked it up. There I was thinking I was making a good choice, and the numbers were way, way, way off. And so do you think I ever ordered that again? Absolutely not. But I logged it. I looked it up. I could have looked it up before I went. I didn't. That was my fault. But looked it up after. And this was way back 2017. And I still remember it because it was shocking to me. And because I had been in the habit, it's like, okay, I'm going to go write it down, put it in my thing. And then I put a big sad face, like never again. And I wrote that. I still remember writing that. Like, no, we will not be doing that again. Okay, so these are the things that, again, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be a little bit better. So when you're looking at the nutrition label, you want the things that, one, you can pronounce most of the ingredients, if not all of them. Two, you want to look for things that don't say things like flour or starch or syrup or natural flavors. If it's natural flavorings, there's nothing natural about it, right? It would say lime juice or lemon juice, right? Natural flavorings is not natural, it's chemicals. And it's just going to spike your blood sugar. So these are the things that we have to look out for. And these are the things that they are not going to tell you, because these are the things that they put in there that keep you coming back and buying more of them. Think about that. These are the things they put in our foods to keep you coming back and buying more of them. We crave what we eat, okay? If we're eating those real whole foods, we are going to crave real whole foods. That's the simple fact, the bottom line. Okay? So that's what I want you to work on this week, is writing down and looking up everything. I know it may seem tedious, but a lot of us eat the same things a couple days in a row. So once you've looked it up once, just flip back in your book and grab it and write it over. That's how I've memorized, after all these years, the eggs, the chicken, the steak. I know all of these numbers, so I don't have to look them up anymore. Okay? So the more we do something, the more second nature it becomes, because it gets embedded into our subconscious. And that is exactly how I lost 1 pound 113 times. I took 5 to 10 minutes more each night to look it up and be very honest with myself and educate myself on what I was putting in my body. Okay, I was eating off the list for the most part. Okay, but nobody's going to be perfect. None of us are going to eat off the list 100% of the time. And so I educated myself on what were my good alternatives when I got in a pinch. And the more I did that, the quicker the weight came off. That's how I lost 1 pound 113 times in 8 months and 3 days. Rinse and repeat. It's just a matter of making the decision and taking the time to sit down and do it. That's that opt-in. that we talk about. Okay. You have to decide, you have to commit, you have to act. That's the big thing. Decide, commit, act, succeed. That's a Tim Grover quote. Decide, commit, act, succeed. Acting is the biggest part, acting on the information that we have. Because we can be the smartest people in the world. We can know all of it. We've all said to ourselves, I know what to do, but I just don't do it. Right? Drop a yes in the chat if you've said that. I know I've said it 1,000 times. I still say it sometimes. I'm like, man, I know exactly what I need to do, but I just haven't done it yet. Whether that be in business, whether that be in your finances, your relationships, your health, whatever. We've all been there and said that, right? I know what to do. I just haven't done it yet. Okay. But we just have to make the decision to do it. I just read a book yesterday called Do It Anyway. Okay. It was a great book. It was just all about, listen, you've got the knowledge, but knowledge is nothing without application. Just like those principles of behavior are nothing without application. Act on it. Take past behaviors and act on them so you can prevent the same negative things from happening in the future. Okay, so that is your homework. I don't typically give homework, but I want you to really be very mindful of everything you're eating this week. Okay, I want you to read every label. I want you to look up every single thing in the MyFitnessPal app or whatever app that you use. I want you to look it up. Okay, and I want you to write it down in your food log. So take it from MyFitnessPal, write it in your food log. Okay. And that's what I want you to do this week. Be very clear and focused. And I think it's going to be pretty eye-opening, some of the stuff that you find. All right. So I will see you back here next Sunday, 7 p.m., same time, same place. You've got a great starting point. I know you all can do it. I know it seems a little bit tedious, but I promise you it will be worth it. All right. I am so proud of each and every one of you for showing up, opting in, getting the information, and holding yourselves accountable. Okay. The next step is that tracking. So let's get the tracking down. And I'll see you back here next Sunday, 7 p.m. And in the meantime, I hope you have a fantastic week. And I cannot wait to hear about how successful you've been. Have a great week, everybody. Bye.